The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
The lines are long and getting longer at America's airports. We have the latest. The Senate continues to debate the Save America Act as new polling shows the popularity of voter ID. Chip Roy of Texas stops by to discuss the news of the day and his campaign for Attorney General, and a legend of TV and movies has passed away. It is Friday, March the 20th. This is Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings, broadcasting to you for Salem, and we are live from Palm Beach Gardens, Florida today. We begin with the news, and it is chaos today at some of America's largest airports, Atlanta, LaGuardia, Houston, among others. The Democratic shutdown of DHS and therefore the TSA has put our national air transportation system on the brink of collapse just as America begins spring break travel season. Take a look at this from Atlanta, Jackson, Hartsfield Airport this morning. Here's Adam Murphy with Atlanta News First on the report in cut number 13.
Behind the camera this morning with me, Roger, give them this perspective. It's unbelievable. Thousands and thousands of travelers just trying to get through the main TSA checkpoint. They have wrapped this line through the baggage claim area over here by Delta, and I gotta.
Folks were showing up at 3 o'clock this morning and still missing 6 a.m. flights in Atlanta. By the way, that's Atlanta. In Georgia, which has two Democratic senators, Ossoff and Warnock, who have both voted for what is happening right now at their state's major airport. Of course, Ossoff faces the voters this November. The South Bend, Indiana International Airport is joining many others across the country in setting up a food drive for their TSA agents who are being forced by the Democrats to work without pay. And listen to this report from Fox 35 in Orlando in cut 11.
For Richard Richards and his wife Julie, the TSA is a family business. But after 21 years of service, the math no longer adds up.
It appears now, without a vote in Congress really soon, that we will miss the next paycheck. For us, that means $10,000 missed pay.
The burden is multiplied between Richard, Julie, and their son and daughter-in-law, all TSA Orlando employees. It's a $20,000 hole in the family bank account.
Airport chaos will continue if Democrats refuse to relent on this shutdown, especially as we head into spring break season. And don't forget why this is happening. Democrats have shut down the Department of Homeland Security because they fundamentally don't want President Trump to deport illegal aliens. That is the issue. And all of this is happening while there are ongoing terror threats in the United States. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard spoke to Congress about this yesterday. She says that half of all people plotting any kind of attack in America were Muslims directly communicating with overseas terrorist organizations. Here's cut number 4.
In 2025, there were at least 3 Islamist terrorist attacks in the United States. Law enforcement disrupted at least 15 U.S.-based Islamist terrorist plotters. Roughly half of last year's disrupted plotters had some online contact with Islamist terrorists inspired by Islamist foreign terrorist organizations abroad. For example, in the recent attempt to attack a synagogue in Michigan, the shooter had familial ties to a Hezbollah leader.
Bottom line here is that Democrats are on a campaign of chaos and misery, and it is you, the American people, who are made to suffer for the Democratic Party's allegiance to illegal aliens. On the Senate floor yesterday, debate continued over the Save America Act. Senator Eric Schmidt of Missouri, friend of the show, laid out the Democratic plot and why this legislation is vital in cut number 5.
Now those same Democrats have the audacity to claim that simply asking people to prove that they're American citizens before they register to vote is somehow voter suppression. Let me translate what they're really saying. They want those people who came here illegally to vote for them to suppress the vote of actual Americans. They fear actual American citizens voting more than they fear the fraud.
Why? Why are these Democrats, you ask, simultaneously defunding DHS and opposing the Save America Act? You heard Schmidt start it, and here's House Republican Brandon Gill finishing it in cut number 6.
They're doing two things at the same time here. They're defunding the Department of Homeland Security for the purpose of thwarting and hamstringing the president's immigration agenda to stop him from deporting illegal aliens. But at the same time, they're also fighting tooth and nail against the Save America Act, which would stop those very same illegal aliens from voting in our elections.
The latest polling on voter ID, by the way, comes today from CBS News. And as it ever was, this remains popular. 80% of Americans, in fact, support showing an ID to vote. Just 20% oppose. The OG 80-20 issue, if you will. Let's break it down. Democrats, 65% support. Republicans, 95%. Independents, 79%. White people, 80%. Black people, 80%. Hispanics, 77%. The only constituency for stopping voter ID are Democratic leaders in Washington, D.C., which ought to tell you just how out of touch they are with the American people, all of the American people. We had diplomacy last night at the White House as the president wrapped up his day with the Japanese prime minister and got some tangible results as well. Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi pledged to invest $73 billion in American next-generation nuclear reactor and gas-fired power plant projects. This is the start of the second phase of Japan's $550 billion spending commitment on American projects that came during trade negotiations with President Trump last year. Here is the Prime Minister of Japan in cut number 2.
A stronger Japan and a stronger America. A more prosperous Japan and a more prosperous America. I am very confident that Donald and I are the best buddies to realize this shared goal.
And on top of that, best buddies, Japan is delivering a bunch of new cherry blossom trees to Washington, D.C., one of the most beautiful things in the city each spring. Here's the president, cut number 1.
This year, we're honored to receive an additional 250 cherry trees, and they're very big, beautiful trees from the great people of Japan in recognition of America's 250th anniversary. And they will remind every future generation of our timeless bond, and they'll be planted near and around the Washington Monument, and it's going to be something very special. They've already started the planting, but it's 250 beautiful specimen trees, and we'll get you over here. We'll check them out after they're planted. We'll get you back.
Cherry blossom season almost upon us in Washington. A little bit of war news. The top propagandist for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard was killed overnight by Israel. Ali Mohammed Naini, the spokesperson and head of public relations for the IRGC, is no longer with us. He was really quite a major figure, the leader of the regime's psychological warfare campaign. A new poll on the war is out from Politico just now. A plurality of Americans support the strikes on Iran, including 81% of MAGA Republicans, 61% of non-MAGA Republicans, and 43% of all Americans say they like it versus just 33% who say they do not approve. Sad news from the world of TV and movies. Legendary tough guy actor Chuck Norris has passed away at the age of 86. I found this clip of Chuck from a few years ago. Let's listen to it in cut number 16.
Our great president, Ronald Reagan, said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Please stand with us. Let's unite for God and country, and may God continue to bless the United States of America."
Rest in peace, Chuck Norris. His words there still ring true today. Let's get some news about aches and pains. You know, since discovering Relief Factor last summer, the Jennings household is quite happy with what it's been able to do for us. And now there's something new to tell you. Relief Factor has improved the already trusted formula. It's now even better. They've added a premium black pepper extract because it helps your body absorb the high-quality ingredients more efficiently, so your body will get even more benefit from what you're already taking. Now, that matters. If you're going to take something every day, which that's how you take Relief Factor, you want your body to actually use it to the best of its ability. That's what this formula is going to do. If you're already taking it, good for you. The formula is better. If you're not taking it, but you needed a little push, make this the day. Start with the 3-week quick start. It's just $19.95. You get it by visiting relieffactor.com or by calling 1-800-4RELIEF. Imagine what it would be like to get rid of these aches and pains. You might just get the answers you're seeking from Relief Factor. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Yale Bar Tur is here to talk about what life is like in Israel and those bomb shelters. A little bit of a humorous interview coming up on The Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings. You know, I got to tell you, I think nutrition has gotten way too complicated. Every week there's a new powder, a new lab-created formula, some new breakthrough. But here is the truth. We've been told since we were kids to eat our fruits and vegetables. Nobody really had to explain why. We just did it. Because when you eat whole foods, you're getting phytonutrients, those natural compounds that your body uses to adjust, repair, and respond every single day. That's not hype. That's how human beings were designed. That's why I take Balance of Nature. They use a tailored vacuum cold process that stabilizes the phytonutrition in fruits and veggies, so you're getting real whole food nutrition, not synthetic substitutes. Their whole health system includes fruits and veggies plus fiber and spice, 47 ingredients in one simple routine. I take it myself. If you want to fight the good fight, go to balanceofnature.com to subscribe and save today. Join hundreds of thousands of customers in one simple routine that is changing the world.
Know how to drive a leftist crazy? Tell the truth and keep smiling. This is The Scott Jennings Show.
It is Friday, March the 20th. Thanks for listening to Common Sense for the American People here on Salem. I'm Scott Jennings reporting. Now, if you live in Israel, here is a fact of life. You have to know where the nearest bomb shelter is, and you know all too well what it's like to have work, parties, dinners, you name it, interrupted by the alerts and sirens of imminent missile attacks. I was wondering, how do people in Israel deal with this constant barrage of missiles and the corresponding psychological toll? Well, my next guest says it's often with humor. Joining us now is the co-host of the Ask a Jew podcast, and she's out today with her latest op-ed in the National Review entitled, "It's the End of the World, LOL." Yale Bar Tur is here. Welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show, Yale. We're glad to have you.
Hey, Scott. Thank you for having me back.
Really glad to see you here today and talk to you. Now, you write in your piece, and I quote, "For as long as I can remember, Israelis and Jews have been under attack and somehow laughing throughout. To an outsider, this may seem disrespectful, but for us, sharing these laughs is more than a gallows humor defense mechanism. It's almost a national duty." Tell us, Yale, what is life like in these bomb shelters and under times when you're under constant missile attack? How do you cope with all this? Tell us about the humor that goes along with that.
Yeah, so as you know, for Israelis, this isn't our first war. It's not our second, it's not our third, it's not our fourth, and it's not our fifth. So people are pretty well versed. You have little kids who can tell you the difference between, different types of ballistic missiles and, what point the Iranian Navy is in right now. People are used to it. It's exhausting. It's terrifying. It's tragic at times. But I think the resilience is a really important part of it. People are trying to make the best out of it. If it's moving parties and weddings to bomb shelters or trying to somehow, go about their normal life as much as they can, because I think at the end of the day, everybody, and the polls are reflected too, really understand the necessity of this war.
Oh, I agree with you. I think the resolve of the Israeli people is quite something, and frankly, I think it's quite misunderstood in the West, and it has been now for a couple of years. Talk to us a little bit about the piece and the humor aspect of this. And you and I have had some conversations offline about the memes and the other jokes that tend to fly around from the Israelis who are in these bomb shelters. Tell us about some of your favorite pieces.
Yeah, so I mean, there are so many. There are really too many to count. There's a guy who goes down to his neighborhood bomb shelter every time in a different costume and, films his neighbors' reactions. There's a lot of memes about emotional eating, which is a big burden of the home front right now. I remember as early as October 8th or 9th, even people were starting to put out some humorous things, and it's very important to say it's not disrespectful. Nobody's making light of the situation, but I think it's more to highlight the absurdity of it. And as long as we can recognize it's absurd, it's kind of a way to keep your head above water, right? Because you're telling yourself, okay, this is not normal. And I think it's a big part of it. And then people want to cheer each other up. They want to make each other laugh. It's a really important part of our society.
That voice you're hearing, Yael Bar-Tur, she's the co-host of the Ask a Jew podcast, and we're discussing her new piece in the National Review today. Yael, talk to us about how Israelis are reacting to the day-to-day news of this Operation Epic Fury, Operation Roaring Lion. It seems like every day there's news of another top Iranian regime figure that's eliminated. This morning we reported actually about the head of public relations for the IRGC. Their head propagandist was eliminated by Israel. When these stories, which by the way is a major deal, when these stories come out, how do everyday Israelis react to it? I assume they exchange some humorous back and forth on the news of these Iranian terrorists who bite the dust.
Yeah, there's a lot of jokes. A lot of these Iranian names are pretty hard to pronounce. So, a lot of newscasters are struggling with it. There's a joke going on that the only leaders left right now in the RGC are all Mossad operatives. But in all seriousness, people are, I think at the end of the day, the last poll I saw from yesterday was that 66% of the Israelis are satisfied with the way the war is going. Not to say that it's not difficult, because it really is. People aren't getting any sleep. Kids are out of school. A lot of businesses are suffering. And then, of course, there's unfortunate loss of life. But people understand that we don't want to be in this situation forever. Nobody wants to go back to the reality where, okay, 6 months from now, a year from now, we're going to have another round. For as long as I can remember, for my entire lifetime, we've had this existential threat over our head. So I think there's a lot of resolve to keep going until the regime collapses, and also to support the Iranian people, which I think we've developed a really strong kind of, online kinship with, seeing the videos there.
Thanks for joining us today. We got to get to a break. We'll check out your piece in National Review, and we have more after this.
Gold and silver recently soared to record highs and then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Well, because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio and is recommending up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 1-800-880-2424 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 1-800-880-2424, 1-800-880-2424, or visit learscott.com.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
It is Friday, March the 20th. Coming up in just a moment, our special guest conversation here in hour number one is Chip Roy, congressman from Texas, also candidate for Attorney General. We'll get to Chip in just a moment. First, if you're a parent or a grandparent, I have a message that you need to hear. It's about your kids and grandkids, and they are being targeted online through these gaming platforms, social media, and messaging apps. They are not very well protected on there. these companies that run these things profit from screen time and engagement. And when predators slip through the cracks, and believe me, they do, it's families that pay the price. Our friends and partners at Child Help hear from children every day who were contacted through these games and apps, kids who were groomed, manipulated, or threatened by adults pretending to be someone else. Let me tell you this story. A boy reached out through Child Help's National Child Abuse Hotline, their chat hotline, and he was terrified, he was ashamed, he had met an adult in an online game who started demanding photos of the boy, and then he started threatening to lie to the boy's parents if he didn't comply. This boy didn't know what to do. He called up Child Help, and that chat may have saved his life. That is why Child Help matters. It's why I donate to Child Help. It's why I believe in the mission of this organization. Your donation supports their life-saving programs. All we're asking for today is $27, and that would save one child from abuse. If big tech won't protect our kids, we have to do it. Donate today at childhelp.org/Scott or text Child Help to 94878 and give your $27 today. Joining me now on the Scott Jennings Show, one of the leaders of the House Freedom Caucus. He is leaving D.C. this year, however, to run for Attorney General of Texas. He would be succeeding Ken Paxton in that position. Welcome to the show, Congressman Chip Roy. Thanks for being with us today.
Scott, great to be with you. Appreciate being on.
Yeah, appreciate your time today. Before we begin with the issues of the day, I have to ask you for your reaction. Texas lost a legend. Chuck Norris has passed away at the age of 86. Thought you might have a moment of reflection about what Chuck Norris meant to Texas.
Yeah, look, my great-great-grandfather was a Texas Ranger, and obviously Chuck Norris had an important role as, Walker, Texas Ranger. But, his life, his legacy, I think he was born, around 1940. I think he's about the same age as my dad. My dad was born in 42. In that generation, they came out of World War II. Chuck served, I think, as an airman. I think, if I have it correct, he certainly wore the uniform. Great patriot, loved the country, was an outspoken supporter of our conservative values in Texas and the president. And he's just a good man, and we're going to miss him. But look, he's a man of deep faith, a Christian. He's on to the next chapter with our Lord and Savior, and he'll be missed. I remember from dodgeball, comes in at the end. It's like, thank you, Chuck Norris, but a good man, and we'll miss him.
Yeah, he was a good-natured guy, and the memes and the after career of Chuck Norris on the internet, it was, and his embrace of that caricature was really something. Yeah, we'll be missing Chuck for sure. Chip, let me talk about what's going on in Washington before we get to your campaign for Attorney General in Texas. You're one of the principal authors of the Save America Act. It got out of the House. It's over in the Senate. They voted to open debate in the Senate. Doesn't seem like they have the votes to do this because of the procedural differences in the Senate than the House. Talk to us about where you believe the legislation stands, and maybe just talk to us about why you wrote the bill and why it is so vital for future elections in America.
Well, Scott, I was waiting for a helicopter to fly over. I worked on this bill 2 years ago with Senator Mike Lee. And if you know Cleta Mitchell, one of the foremost experts in election law, a former lawyer to President Trump, we were concerned about the 24 elections. We were concerned about all of the possibilities for fraud and for the Americans not to have control of their elections because non-citizens would be voting. So we drafted the bill specifically for that purpose. We added voter ID because people were kind of conflating the two issues, and we dubbed it the Save America Act, working with the president. Passed it out of the House, obviously. And now that it's over in the Senate, we're just trying to get action and movement. And there's a lot of misinformation about what's going on. The truth is, and we could do an entire podcast on just this topic. Look, I worked in the Senate. I was Ted Cruz's chief of staff. I was a lawyer in the Senate. I know the rules there very well. The fact is, we're not asking to change the rules. All we're asking for is to have debate. We want the Senate to put it on the floor and debate and to vote. Now, we've got kind of a half measure here. I think Majority Leader Thune deserves credit, given that he's got 3 or 4 Republicans that aren't fully on board. We've had Tom Tillis and McConnell and Murkowski at a minimum who have raised issues. He's put it on the floor, and now we're having some debate. I think we need to keep it on the floor. We need to keep the heat up. The American people need to see the Senate working. I mean, Scott, you're a student of Washington, D.C. When was the last time you saw so much attention on the Senate floor and actual speeches and debate going on instead of being in a quorum call when they're trying to get 51. They're not really. They're just in a quorum call, or they're just doing fake speeches and then going out to a press conference. We actually at least have debate going on the floor. That's important on an issue that polls at 75, 80, 85%, depending on whether you're talking about citizenship or voter ID. I don't know whether it will succeed. What I know is it's important for the American people to see us try to fight, make sure the Democrats are the ones that are obviously opposing it. And if there's a handful of Republicans that fail to go along, the American people need to know that too. But the vast majority of Republicans are on board and united on this.
Yeah, the debate is opened, and I think we are in for a clear delineation of positions here between the parties. I think Thune has made sure of that. You referenced the polling. The last polling we have actually came out this morning from CBS News. It's a true 80-20 issue. Sort of curious to me. Democrats, Republicans, independents, black, white, Hispanic, any way you slice the American electorate, there is broad support for this, and yet Democratic leaders in Washington have spent a lot of capital on demonizing this bill and demonizing voter ID. There's literally no constituency for this out there other than Chuck Schumer and the people who work in his office. It's kind of political malpractice for the Democrats here, don't you think?
Well, I mean, I certainly hope so. I mean, look, I think the only constituency are cheaters and people who want to ensure that they're going to have non-citizens voting and so that they can try to make the election go in their favor with people who aren't Americans. And look, this issue is getting exponentially more important with all of the people that were released into our country, notwithstanding Tom Homan and the president's great work trying to remove folks. We still have millions of people in here that were brought in under Biden and Mayorkas. We have people under legal immigration that have come here. We have people who have overstayed their visas. We have lots of people here who do not have a vested interest in our nation or becoming a part of the melting pot. We have a lot of people here who want to try to transform our nation. You have Islamists trying to Islamify Texas and America. You have Marxists who are trying to put criminals on our streets and undermine our safety and security. This is all they're open about it. So we don't want these people to vote. That's not controversial. And most Americans agree, even some of our more left-leaning friends. So in Washington, the leadership there, they do not want to give the president a win, and they want to preserve the ability of non-citizens to vote. It's their core constituency right now, and I think that's what you're seeing unfold. We've just got to do a good job of making sure the American people know that heading into the election. Hope the economy gets even stronger and moves in the right direction, and then we can do well in November. But we got a lot of work to do, and this bill is really important to mobilize our people.
That voice you're hearing is Chip Roy, congressman from Texas. Now, Chip, you've decided to move on from Washington, and you are running for Attorney General of Texas. You had the Texas primary a few weeks ago, and you are now in a runoff. The primary runoff now is in May. Tell us, why did you decide to step down from Congress and run for this Attorney General seat in Texas? Do you think you can do more good there?
Well, look, I think I've done what I can do here as 1/435th of 1/2 of 1/3 of the power structure up here. We've made a lot of changes. We've made some reforms. We've supported the president. We delivered on the big, beautiful bill. We got historic tax cuts. We were able to peel back a lot of the Medicaid policies and make sure we got reforms in place there so we can bolster that and save money. We were able to peel back about half of the Green New Scam subsidies, of the wind and solar subsidies, which, by the way, a leftist group in California ran $1 million of ads against me to end my career because I dared to try to stop those Green New Scam subsidies. That's what's really going on. So the reason I'm running for Attorney General is because it's time to go home to Texas for me. I believe in citizen legislators. You know, I said I supported term limits. I've been up here for 4 terms. We need to cycle through, and I need to go home. My daughter's 14. My son is 16. And I want to go home, and my wife's been carrying the load. But importantly, I want to fight for Texas. Scott, people do not understand. Texas is under direct assault. There is a massive funded effort to Islamify Texas, and it is going to happen. Go to Plano. Go to parts around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Go look at Epic City. Look at the 330 mosques that are now across Texas and more being built in Texas than any other state in the union. If you think that what's happening in Paris and London is not coming here, You're mistaken. I don't mean you, Scott, but the average American. We need to understand what's happening. And you've got to have an attorney general in Texas who's been in a courtroom, who's practiced law, who's been the chairman of the subcommittee of the Constitution, who has the backbone to stand up and fight. And you don't have to agree with every position I take. I mean, you know this well, and all the great work you do on CNN, taking arrows, sitting there, just speaking truth. I try to do what I think is right under the Constitution. That aligns with President Trump 98% of the time. I have the second highest voting record of any member of Congress aligning with the president. But when I disagree, I'm not afraid to say it. When I disagree with my colleagues, I'm not afraid to say it. I take an oath to the Constitution. I take an oath to the laws, and I serve the people that I represent. That's who you want as Attorney General. My opponent is a trust fund kid who spent $18 million saying that Chip Roy is a rhino. Now, anybody who watches politics knows that I've devoted my life to conservatism, limited government, low spending, securing the border, backing the president, delivering results. And so I'm asking the people of Texas to get in behind us as the grassroots candidate to ensure we have a fighter with the legal acumen and ability who's actually seen the inside of a courtroom, unlike my opponent, and isn't trying to buy the election. Texas should not be for sale. Texas is too important for on-the-job training.
Chip, we got a couple of seconds left here. If someone wants to learn about your campaign or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, appreciate it, Scott. Yeah, chiproy.com, chiproy.com. Like everybody who could send in $100, $10, $1,000, whatever you can afford, scrape up the pennies in the couch. I'd appreciate it. We need to go out and win this election, but importantly, we got to save this country. I'm going to keep fighting in Congress alongside President Trump and deliver, but I'm seeking support for Attorney General. And Scott, I appreciate it. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for being a voice for truth and standing up for the right thing on CNN and elsewhere.
Thanks a lot, Chip. Appreciate your time today. Thanks for all your good work in Washington, and good luck in May. We'll have you back, I'm sure, in the very near future. We are going to take a break.
Thanks, Scott.
First, however, I do want to put in a good word for actually a Texas company called Patriot Mobile. Now, these guys are a cell phone provider, but they are more than that. They don't just provide this high-quality premium cell phone service. They actually care about your values. They invest in the Christian conservative cause. You're not going to find that in any other wireless provider. So when you switch to Patriot Mobile, you don't give up a thing. You get quality service when you switch over. You can keep your number. You can keep your phone. You can upgrade your phone. You give up nothing. But what you gain is a partner in your cell phone provider that is actually fighting for what you believe in and that cares about what you believe in. There's no hassle here. It is easy to switch over. Here's how you do it. You go to patriotmobile.com/Scott, or you call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code SCOTT for a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/Scott or 972-PATRIOT. I encourage you to make the switch today. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, the legend himself is here. Mike Gallagher of Salem Radio joins, and we're going to talk about our amazing Gulf of America cruise that we're taking together in November, and we want you to join us. Talk about it next here on The Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
It is Friday, March 20th here on Common Sense for the American People. Now, you have been listening to me for months talk about the Gulf of America cruise that's coming up in November, and you've heard me tell you time and again that Mike Gallagher, the legend here at Salem, is going to be joining us. And I got the impression that some of you may be thinking, oh, Scott's making this up. He couldn't possibly have talked Mike Gallagher into going on a cruise with him. And so to dispel these rumors, I have in fact invited Mike Gallagher on the show today. Mike, thanks for being with us. And in fact, you and I are cruising together this November, aren't we?
Well, this is your inaugural Salem Media Cruise, and so everybody's all excited that we talked you into going because we're going to have hundreds of people on the ship with us. You've never done this with Salem before. And look, for people who are in awe of, your big-time TV status, I mean, Scott, you're a big star. And to have people get up close and personal with you on a cruise ship, we're going to be doing events on stage, the world stage. Wait till you see this ship. It's the Eurodam from Holland America. Beautiful state-of-the-art ship. All kinds of restaurants. And as you said, Gulf of America, Scott. We're going to go through Cozumel and the Grand Cayman Islands and the Bahamas and Jamaica. And then at night, you and I and just announced Larry O'Connor, because so many people are signing up. We're expanding the programming. Town Hall's own Larry O'Connor is going to join us. Jennifer Horn's going to be there from KRLA in Los Angeles. We're going to have a ball. Scott, there is nothing like being with hundreds of like-minded patriots on a vacation like this, November 14th through the 21st. And we're gonna break you in. I mean, this is the first one for you, and I'm just going to warn you. When you want to go down the hall and go to the midnight buffet, you're going to be stopped a few times by people who want to talk to you, which is part of the fun. So, hey, sign up today because staterooms are going fast.
They really are, and I'm looking forward to it. I'll be honest, I'm a little worried about the hazing. I've heard about the hazing that goes on for the first-timers, but I'm willing to endure it if it makes a better cruise for our listeners. Now, here's how you sign up for this. And by the way, this is a vital item. There's no other way to get on this cruise ship and do the programming with Gallagher and Jennings and O'Connor and Jennifer and the whole crew. You have to do it this way. You text the word cruise to 94878, or you can go to scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. But if you want to get your stateroom booked, text the word cruise to 94878 or go to scottjenningsshow.com and click on that banner. You got to do it this way. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on some of this programming. What I like about it is this is coming, by the way, right after the election, and we'll see what happens in the election. So we're going to have a ton of election stuff to analyze, and then, of course, at that point, we'll be in full-blown 2028 modes. You want to start talking about the next presidential, that sort of time period right there. I think the political talk is going to be amazing.
And your advice is really important because I found that over the years that we've done these cruises, Seb Gorka and I did one a couple of years ago, and we got on the ship and people were saying, hey, Mike, Seb, hey, can you take a picture with us? But they weren't part of our group. They booked the trip directly through Holland America trying to save a few bucks, but you can't get access to all the events we're going to do. We're going to have a lot of exclusive onboard events on the beautiful world stage. Wait till you see it, Scott. They got a big LED screen, and we're going to and Larry O'Connor and I are both big theater fans. So there might be a soft shoe or a buddy song that Larry and I are going to perform that we'll drag you up on stage with. This could be ugly, but we're gonna all do it together. We're gonna have a great time. And yeah, you gotta go the way that Scott said to book it so that you can get access to all of the big events. But it's a blast. I mean, the camaraderie, and we're celebrating America's 250th birthday, Scott. So what a great vacation. If you're tired of the cold and the snow, hey, November in the Bahamas, I can think of a worse place to be.
Oh my gosh, after this winter, we had, I read this in Kentucky where I live, we had more days of snow on the ground in Kentucky than in over 30 years. It's been a miserable winter. In D.C., it was cold. We had snow. I go to New York, it's cold. We have snow. And, all winter long I've been thinking about, I got to do something sometime this year. And by the time November rolls around, it'll be cold again. And so in order to avoid that, the Gulf of America cruise is the way to do it. Here is the way you book it. Text the word cruise, CRUISE, to 94878 or go to scottjenningsshow.com. Click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. Mike Gallagher will be there. As you mentioned, Larry O'Connor from Town Hall, if you like reading his stuff. We're going to have these amazing programs. We're going to see amazing sights. We're going to eat amazing food. And for us, it's really cool. We get to meet you, our listeners, and share all this fellowship and conversation with like-minded conservatives. Mike Gallagher, thank you for coming on to affirm that this cruise is in fact happening. We look forward to seeing you there, and we'll have more right after this.
If the leftists haven't had enough yet, there's more. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, Friday, March the 20th, we are underway with hour number 2. Quick check of the headlines. The United States is deploying 3 more warships, roughly 2,500 more Marines to the Middle East from the USS Boxer amphibious group. Could be part of a plan here to further secure the Strait of Hormuz and protect ships passing through there from Iranian attacks. Over in the House of Representatives on Thursday, that chamber passed a bill to deport foreign nationals and non-citizens if they are convicted of or admit to harming animals that are used in law enforcement, most often dogs. The vote was 228 to 190. The 190 House members who voted to allow illegal immigrants to continue to abuse police dogs were all Democrats, every single one. Of course, what do you expect? They vote to keep illegal immigrants in the country who abuse other human beings. Why would they treat people who abuse dogs any differently? And the Trump administration has announced today that it is suing Harvard University for violating the civil rights of Jewish students on campus following October the 7th and the ensuing protests that came. Here's the Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon in cut number 17.
Harvard allowed pro-Palestinian protests to take over the campus, but importantly, that included these people blocking visibly Jewish and Israeli students from being able to get to their classes. Now, Harvard has rules about how students should conduct themselves, but it relaxed those rules when it came to these particular protesters. So, every American university that takes federal funding must comply with federal law, including in this case, Title VI. The United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division will not allow any particular category of students in our country to be discriminated against, taunted, or otherwise harassed in this horrific fashion that Harvard tolerated.
Now, despite being a private university, Harvard remains deeply dependent on federal funding, which does give the Trump administration some leverage here on enforcing civil rights laws. Now, on the same topic, a couple of weeks ago, we brought you a story about parents in California who are suing that state's education system in a first-of-its-kind complaint over anti-Semitic propaganda and harassment in public schools. The parents highlighted stories of Jewish students being segregated, with teachers leading vulgar anti-Semitic chants against Israel and the Jewish people. My next guest and his organization have put together a framework to help root out this evil from our schools. Joining us now to discuss this new report and their recommendations for change is Josh Weiner, the Chief Strategy Officer for NAVI, which is the North American Values Institute. Josh, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show. I'd like to hear about NAVI's new report and what you intend to do with it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Scott. I appreciate it. So we have a report that we've released called When the Classroom Turns Hostile, a strategic response to extremism and anti-Semitism in K-12 schools. Because a lot of what we are seeing at places like Harvard University, Columbia University, and other places is actually happening in a more insidious way in K-12 schools. That there is an operating system by which a worldview is being put in place that necessarily derides America, Western society, Western values, Western epistemology, and eventually Jews and Israel as ultimately oppressors that need to be overtaken, overturned. And you know, this is not about trying to change people's minds about this ideology, but our report essentially determines that it's about who's in power in all the vectors of transmission and all of the different aspects of K-12 education. That extremist groups have hijacked places like teachers' unions, colleges of education, and other really important, really foundations for the education system, and that none of these things can be solved without obtaining power back from these radical individuals.
Yeah, what we've seen from news reports and your own investigations here is that you do have teachers going into the classroom and telling students, very young students, extremely hateful things, taking extremely partisan political positions on all of these issues that we know are going on with Israel and in the Middle East. And frankly, they're doing it without any oversight. What shocks me about all of this is that school boards don't really know about it, or if they do, they look the other way. You have school administrators who either look the other way or they encourage it. The only real barrier between this kind of hatred in the classroom and these students is the parents. And I think that's what's important about your report and your work here, is that it's parents who have to identify this, call it out, and make it stop. You agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. In universities, students at least have enough agency to push back, recognize, and, you know, put together an actual response. A child just does not. They're still learning how to do that. They're pressured by a social situation that's very difficult for them. So it is incumbent in most all cases on parents to really ask their kids questions, log into their student portals, review the syllabi, review the assignments to understand what is actually happening. And we have kids as young as kindergarten being told that whiteness is a bad deal and that they should feel bad about who they are because of that. And almost worse is they're telling people that because they're black, brown, or otherwise, or LGBTQ plus, that they are helpless victims and they should be hopeless. And the only way to really make a difference is to tear down the systems. And those systems are America and our liberal democracy that actually achieved much of the equality that these people actually have in this country, and are the systems that by which they can build resilience and actually create success for themselves. So we're not really teaching fairly what America can do to actually build resilience and help people lift themselves out of situations where they feel like victims. We're just really in schools, especially in big cities, telling them to be hopeless. And none of this can like you can talk about bringing phonics into the classroom or scientifically backed math pedagogy to improve proficiency. But these things are actually characterized by those in power as tools of the oppressors, tools of the white supremacy. So again, it goes back to, it's nice to want phonics education, but how can you get that in if the people in power are framing that as something that's a tool of oppression?
Josh, you talk about a growing trend of, quote, social justice unionism, in which a small but highly organized group of activists treats union leadership as a vehicle for this anti-Western, anti-American political agenda. Tell us about how these unions, these teachers' unions, are really part of the problem here.
Yeah, so look, like, basically we have Democrats, I think, that are sitting here, and the ones that are pretending to be not woke are saying, you know, we need to get away from this distraction of bathrooms and pronouns in schools. But what they're not recognizing, and this is not a bug or a distraction, it's actually the feature. And the feature is being put in place by a number of different factors, including the teachers' unions. In Chicago, we recently released the House of Delegates report, and I think 18% of their spending was on actual representation of teachers and educators and their rights and their collective bargaining in schools. That leaves a whole bunch of spending for political projects. And the political projects include standing up the Democratic Socialist candidates across the city. 65% of Mayor Johnson's last mayoral campaign came from funding from the Chicago Teachers Union and its affiliates. Its affiliates being the IFT and the AFT, which, by the way, Stacey Gates, the head of IFT and CTU, is EVP of the AFT. So we talk, you know, they're all about calling out cronyism, but they kind of do it themselves. But it's these unions then bring in teacher training. They actually passed a resolution to cancel school on May 1st in the name of activism for a whole collective of causes, including Iran, taxing the rich, LGBTQ rights, Lebanon, like it was just the hodgepodge. ICE.
It's all under. It's what you said at the beginning. It's all under this rubric of oppressors versus oppressed, tearing down Western civilization. Let's find the cause du jour and fit it under there. And they're turning our schools into vehicles for this anti-Western activism. Josh Weiner, you're the Chief Strategy Officer for NAVI, the North American Values Institute. I would encourage you all to visit NAVI and read this important report. Josh, we look forward to having you back in the near future. America, by the way, is entering its 250th year, and right now we are determining the future of our country, the culture and our economy. Where are we going with everything? And as you consider these weighty matters, you should do business with companies that share your values. One of them is Patriot Mobile. Here's the deal. You don't have to give up quality or service when you switch to Patriot Mobile. They deliver premium service. In fact, you'll get the same or better coverage than you have right now. There's no hassle in switching. Keep your number. But what you're getting is you're getting into business with a company that shares your values when it comes to saving America. Use promo code SCOTT and you'll get a free month of service. Here's how you do it. PatriotMobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT to make the switch today. Patriot Mobile, it's a great company. They believe in America's future. When we come back, it's the Relief Factor Pain of the week. Don't miss it here on Salem.
Fighting the left with the best weapon we have, common sense. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, it's Friday, March 20th, and because it's Friday afternoon, you know what that means. It is time for the Relief Factor Pain of the Week.
And now, the Relief Factor Pain of the Week. Oh.
Relief Factor is all about getting you out of pain, back pain, knee pain, joint pain. We hear it all. But every once in a while, every Friday, we talk about a different kind of pain, the pain that's usually being caused by someone in Washington, D.C. And folks, the pain this week is being felt in airports all across America. So this week's Relief Factor Pain of the Week goes to Senate Democrats for continuing to shut down the Department of Homeland Security, which includes the Transportation Safety Administration, or TSA. Now, let's talk about who is really hurting here. It's not the politicians. No, they're getting their paychecks just fine. Direct deposit, by the way, still working beautifully if you're a member of Congress. It's the TSA agents, the DHS workers, the people actually doing jobs that matter. They are now working for free, and they're doing it again. This is the second time the Democrats have done this to them in the last few months. You have people showing up to work, putting on the uniform, dealing with the traveling public, which, let's be honest, is already a high-risk, high-anxiety occupation, and now they are doing it without pay. So, congratulations, Washington Democrats. You have turned airport security into volunteer work. Now, these people are not crossing guards, folks. They are literally there to save us from terrorists and crazy people who might want to get on these airplanes with the rest of us. Now, come to think of it, I guess if Democrats are willing to let terrorists into our country through open borders, I guess it somewhat makes sense. They wouldn't really care all that much about this either. At any rate, this is where we are. And the best part here, the same Democrats who lecture the country nonstop about working people, they are the ones literally taking away the paychecks from some of the hardest working people in the federal government. They have spent years telling us essential workers are heroes. They are the backbone of America. And now the message is, hey, heroes, quick favor, keep working. We're just going to hold on to your paycheck and hold that hostage for a little while longer. Nothing about this is pro-worker. Forcing people to work for free? I guess Democrats haven't changed all that much since the 1850s, have they? None of this is an accident, by the way. What you're watching right now is a tired political strategy. Create chaos, let it spread, make your life miserable, and then go on TV and say, wow, goodness gracious, America's a mess. Must be that Donald Trump that did it. Meanwhile, the airports today look like a scene out of a disaster movie. Atlanta is nuts. LaGuardia, Palm Beach. I just saw Palm Beach International. They're going crazy over there. The busiest airports in America. We have lines wrapped around the building. People are showing up 3, 4, 5 hours in advance and still missing their flights. TSA agents are calling out in huge numbers. In some airports, 30 or 40% of TSA agents aren't able to show up. And to be honest, if your boss said, hey, we're not paying you, but you need to show up, keep smiling at passengers who are taking off their shoes, well, you might have a sudden scheduling conflict too. You could rediscover your hobbies. You might reconnect with your family. You might become unavailable indefinitely. And yet, a lot of these workers are still showing up. And thank you to the TSA workers I encounter regularly in the airports through which I travel. But that's more than you can say for these Democrats in Washington. You know what? That's actually not fair. The Democrats in Washington are showing up. It's just that they show up for their actual constituency, which is illegal aliens, and definitely not the working men and women of the TSA or the United States of America at large. That is truly the issue here. Dems have DHS shut down to prevent or try to prevent deportations, and they're causing TSA agents to go hungry because of it. So, if you're upset with your airport line today. If you're wondering, why have I been standing here for 3, 4, 5 hours? Why did I just miss my flight? It's because Senate Democrats in Washington care more about illegal aliens than seeing you get to where you need to go. TSA workers, our heart goes out to you. Thank you for showing up and still protecting us, even though you aren't getting paid. Senate Democrats in Washington, they are the relief factor pain of the week. If you're dealing with pain, try the 3-week quick start. See how it works for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or visit relieffactor.com. We'll take a break, and when we come back, it's time for Friday Punditry. Matt Whitlock is here. We'll have a great conversation right after this.
Portions of the Scott Jennings Show are sponsored in part by Americans for Prosperity.
It is Friday, March the 20th. Thanks for listening to Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings is here on Salem. In just a moment, we get to our Friday Punditry with our friend Matt Whitlock. First, a quick word from our friends at Americans for Prosperity. In March of 1775, at St. John's Church in Richmond, Patrick Henry rose to speak words that spurred the American Revolution. He said, "Give me liberty or give me death." And as we celebrate America's 250th anniversary, it has never been more important to reflect on our nation's values and commit ourselves to moving our country forward. Now, our friends at Americans for Prosperity have created a terrific way to celebrate this historic year through their One Small Step initiative. It's a campaign built on a simple idea that liberty requires courage, conviction, and an active citizenry. For nearly 250 years, Americans have preserved liberty through small, deliberate steps, and now it's on us, in the face of tremendous opposition to these ideas, to ensure these freedoms pass on to the next generation. If you believe freedom is worth defending, then I encourage you to visit a250toolkit.com/Scott and add your voice for liberty. That's a250toolkit.com/Scott. Would love to see you log on to that and take advantage of this amazing campaign. All right, we are ready for Friday Punditry. One of the best in the business is here. Matt Whitlock is joining us. Welcome back, Matt, to the Scott Jennings Show. We had a lot of stuff going on this week. I know one of the big things for you is that the Prime Minister of Japan had a very successful visit to the White House with President Trump. They had a press conference, they had a lunch, they had a dinner, they made all kinds of announcements. You have some experience with Japanese politics, Matt. Tell us about it.
I do. I actually served Latter-day Saint mission in Japan during college. And so since then, I've kept up Japanese. And also when I worked in the Senate for Senator Hatch, I had the opportunity to be around a little bit of the sort of trade conversation with Japan. I had an opportunity to meet Prime Minister Abe. And I do think that what we're seeing with Prime Minister Takaichi is that she saw the value that Japan got out of Prime Minister Abe's relationship with President Trump. You remember, they were bros. Those guys golfed together. They hung out. They really liked each other. And it was great for both countries. And Prime Minister Takaichi came in this week with a lot of big expectations, a lot of sort of scrutiny of what she's going to say about Iran, how she's going to defend Japanese interests, because they do have a very complex dynamic with their military. In that after World War II, the Constitution that we helped write for them really limited what they can use military resources for. And so that's what she's trying to navigate. But if I were to name a winner of the week, I would have said she did a phenomenal job coming in, being disarming. And the thing that I thought was so interesting is the Pearl Harbor joke from President Trump. Those of us who have followed President Trump long enough can't really be shocked by anything anymore, but that one was like, whoa, like, has it been long enough that we can make Pearl Harbor jokes? But the media, the American media, really freaked out. They were like, oh my gosh, this is a diplomatic incident. But if you look at her reaction, but also if you look at the Japanese media back home, it's very vanilla. I went through some of their headlines because I thought, how are they reporting this? Are they talking about how Trump's a terrible vulgarian who's still holding grudges about World War II? No, it's very vanilla. They talked about it as a joke, a little bit of an awkward moment that she handled really well. And I think at the end of the day, the stories for her were incredibly positive. So winner of the week for me.
Yeah, she's been terrific, and, Americans love this new prime minister. And the joke, it was predictable when he made it that the media and the liberal Trump haters were going to go crazy. But because of that, let's listen to it again. Here's cut number 14.
Japanese
Well,
citizens?
one thing, you don't want to signal too much. You know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, do you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did. And because of that surprise, we knocked out the first 2 days. We probably.
I mean, when he gets those world leaders in the Oval, I mean, he throws out some absolute bangers. And to our liberal friends, Matt, to our friends in the media, it's not the first time a president, by the way, has made a little joke about things that happened in history. I believe years ago, was it President Obama who joked about the British burning down the White House when he had the British prime minister? And so, you know, occasionally the president can show a little personality, and particularly when they have a close relationship like Trump does with Takaichi, you can have a little joke among friends. And here's a message to liberals.
Exactly.
It's okay to make and take a joke. You can make and take a joke. You can smile a little. Everything doesn't have to be outrageous, you know?
It was 80 years ago before both of them were born. That doesn't mean that, you know, we've forgotten what happened. But when you contextualize, there are a number of reporters who were like, this was before she was even born. How could he blame her? He's not blaming her. He's making a joke about one of the most prominent things he knows about Japan and the military. So I thought that the reaction was naturally overwrought. But it's fun to contextualize it with how Japan is actually taking it, which is like, yeah, it's a little awkward, but ha ha ha. Ho ho ho.
All right, here's the next topic. I got to get in J.B. Pritzker here. Now, Pritzker is the governor of Illinois, and he had a pretty decent night, by the way, in the Illinois Democratic primary that was this week. And so he's been making the rounds, doing some media about that and about his potential probable run for president in 2028. Man, I want to play this clip and have you listen to this. Yep. It seems like J.B. Pritzker's entire agenda revolves around throwing anybody who met, voted for, or otherwise had anything to do with Donald Trump in jail. Here's cut number 3.
What does a Project 2029 agenda look like for you?
I don't think you can speak of it in shorthand, but I'll just say a couple of things that I think are absolutely necessary. One is we've got to restore the rule of law, and that means holding people accountable who've broken the law. I'm talking about in this administration, when we get a new one, the people in this administration who've broken the law and federal agents who've broken the law need to be held accountable.
And that means criminally prosecuted.
Criminally prosecuted, civilly prosecuted, whatever it is that we can do, right? It may be that you can't criminally prosecute somebody, but that you can go after them civilly.
Okay, Matt, what do you make of it? Pretty chilling stuff from Pritzker.
These guys never learn what they are already forgetting, or maybe they haven't forgotten, but they know that in order to win a Democrat primary, they have to win the resistance Olympics. But what made Donald Trump sort of steamroll over the primary to get back into office was Democrats weaponizing government against him. And when you hear J.B. Pritzker, what he's trying to do there is signal to the base, I'm the guy who's going to be the king of the resistance. I'm the guy who's going to sort of go the furthest in fighting Trump, putting people in jail, things like that. That's not what people want. His Project 2029 has nothing to do with affordability, with safety, with continuing. Even now today, fixing the immigration system is still incredibly popular. And so I think that JB is reading sort of what people are saying online and feeling like I need to sort of outduel Gavin and AOC and Zoran and all of these kooky people to get ahead of them. But there's no positive agenda there. And that's true of all the Democrats we see right now. Gavin, there's no sort of leadership and ideas to move forward. It's all who can outperform each other in this sort of theater kid competition to be the most sort of Trump resistance focused. And I don't think it's positive. I think there's a very narrow group that this actually appeals to. People want to see immigration enforced. They want to see people fighting for their families to lower costs. JB is not going to do any of that stuff. And I think he's making pretty clear here. And that's why I don't expect him to actually go very far.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen to him. I am worried that this primary is going to turn into something like this. Well, I'll throw 100 Trump people in jail. Oh, really? I'll throw 200 in jail. Oh, really? I'll throw 500 in jail. Oh, really? I'll throw anyone in jail who was ever within 500 feet of Donald Trump. I feel like that's where the Democrats are headed. And you know, for all the time they spend complaining about Trump being vindictive and vengeful and so on, I mean, it doesn't really get more vengeful than that. And by the way, what Pritzker is doing there is he's sending a message. He wants existing current federal law enforcement to essentially not go to work. He wants them to stop doing their jobs. These Democrats, I still believe they've plunged us into a nullification crisis. They don't want federal laws enforced. And now the message is, if you simply enforce federal laws, we're going to criminalize your behavior. It's pretty chilling stuff. All right, Matt, you mentioned Gavin Newsom, by the way. Now, he wasn't as much in the news this week, but his wife was. And some video of Gavin Newsom's spouse. Big week for political spouses, by the way, which we'll get to in a minute. Let's start with Newsom's. She says there's a lot to learn from same-sex couples and that gender is a spectrum. Here's cut number 7.
There's so much to learn from same-sex couples who have learned to communicate and who also are like, well, look, you know, someone's got to do the care work in a same-sex male couple. Someone's got to do that. So I'm just going to do it. And this is like, and not be afraid or ashamed because it's part of being human. We're all on a spectrum, right? It's just how society kind of pushes us and pressures us into these limiting gender roles. But again, the folks on the far right, they're missing is just this, they're living in this silo, this evangelical conservative silo that ultimately it's just pulling us back as a country to a time and a place where we don't deserve to be, and we're not going to be, because honestly, young women and fathers of daughters are awake now and they're woke and they're not going to let us go back. And so I have so much hope because of that. And obviously California has a huge responsibility to lead.
Okay, Matt, quick question. Have Democrats figured out their new messenger for middle America? And is this lady it?
She's it, man. That was beautiful. And that's one of like 3 or 4 different clips we've heard from her in the last week that are just, it's basically like if Kamala Harris had studied in theater to play the role of a cringy white woman. That's it. It's similar word salad structure. She doesn't know where she's actually going to end those sentences, but she's got a list of keywords, sort of woke buzzwords that she needs to get in there. But the other thing that I think is so fascinating is how often we hear from liberals who talk about conservatives being in silos. They say we're the ones that are sort of living in an echo chamber that only confirms our thoughts. If you listen to Jennifer Siebel Newsom talk, you think she has ever talked to a farmer in her life? Oh my gosh. Never. Jennifer is phenomenal. I can't wait for Gavin to run and have her out there because she is scandal after scandal after word salad. I don't know if you've heard anything about her documentary scandal in California. That might be a topic for another day, but people should look it up. California Post did amazing work on this. We covered it on our podcast. She charged California taxpayers for the privilege of licensing her woke, creepy, and sometimes pornographic documentaries. And then parents complained that their kids were shown inappropriate naked images that the governor's wife had put into documentaries in their elementary school. It's crazy. So there's a lot there. I can't wait to follow her. She's given us a lot of material.
That voice is Matt Whitlock. He's our pundit of the week. He's the host of the 10-Minute Drill podcast, which I highly recommend you check out. Matt, we're going to take a break. We'll come back with our winners and losers of the week and talk about Mom Donnie's spouse as well. And I do want to give you a note from our friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. As you know, they are on the front lines of preparing large-scale distributions of life-saving food, first aid, and emergency essentials for security personnel and hospitals and bomb shelters in the Holy Land. Folks over there are living under constant alarms and rocket attacks, and this is where the fellowship really matters because Israel's most vulnerable, the sick, the elderly, children and families, they depend on the fellowship at these critical times. I am asking you to join Christians and Jews around the world in praying for the protection of Israel, her people, and the brave American and Israeli troops who are putting their lives on the line in this fight for freedom. Stand with Israel in prayerful support today by visiting supportifcj.org. That is supportifcj.org. More punditry with Matt Whitlock when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
You want to drive a leftist crazy? Tell the truth and keep smiling. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Home stretch here on Friday, March 20th. Pundit of the week is Matt Whitlock. Matt, now is the time when we do our winners and losers. Now, you already picked your international winner of the week, which is Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi. So I'm going to ask you for a domestic politics winner of the week. Matt, who was it?
I have to say, I personally really enjoyed seeing John Cornyn put small House member Greg Kasser in a locker when they had a little showdown at the Austin airport. Kasser was there to try and say, how could Republicans hold back funding from TSA? And Cornyn didn't take any of that BS and said, Democrats are the ones who did this. Meanwhile, you're holding back funding while we had a terrorist attack in downtown Austin, miles away from where they were standing. I thought it was great. And then I also thought Cornyn went back and they just passed a bill in the Senate to prevent lawmakers from getting special treatment at airports while they're withholding funding from TSA. I thought that was incredibly positive. And also, anytime you can put one of those really annoying House Democrat squad members in a locker like that, I think it's valuable TV.
Spoken like a true Senate staffer, Matt. We will.
Exactly.
we did. That wasn't lost on me.
Put all the
All
House
right.
members in there.
Yeah. So my job is to pick the loser of the week. Let's see. Who could it be? Could Goop Mamdani's wife, with all of her, racist, homophobic social media that was uncovered. She had to delete an old Twitter account. That's an interesting one. Speaking of spouses, we talked about Newsom's spouse, but she had a strong week this week. Mamdani's wife did. Let's see. We could do the Mojtaba Khomeini, the new Ayatollah, because it was reported and leaked this week that the CIA briefed President Trump that he's most likely gay. And I assume when that got out in Iran, that wasn't too hot. Now, we haven't even seen this guy, by the way. He's still a cardboard cutout being paraded around, so we don't know. But I think, Matt, I'm going to go with my old friend, Kat Abigazala. Now, Kat Abigazala is like a social media influencer on the left, big Democrat. And she decided to run for Congress in a Illinois congressional seat in which she was not from. I don't even think she lived there, to be honest. And this was the, north side of Chicago, Evanston area. And so she's been running in this congressional race for quite some time. Now, I had a run-in with Kat Abigazala on CNN last summer in which she said the most revealing thing. Cut number 19.
Everyone deserves health care.
Even illegals?
Every single person in the world deserves.
Just for the record, as a candidate, you're for illegal aliens getting Medicaid.
I think everyone in the world deserves.
That's a yes. That's a yes.
I'm such a
That's a Democratic position.
It is a yes, but
it's a Democratic position. Illegal aliens should get Medicaid.
But I mean,
how is it controversial?
But how is it controversial?
How is it controversial to think I don't want someone to die in the hospital because they can't afford it?
Now, even though Kat Abigazala has lost her primary to Daniel Biss, who I guess is the mayor of Evanston, her statement to me on CNN, Matt, will live on forever, affirming that, in fact, yes, it is the Democratic Party's position. It's not even controversial to say that every single illegal alien in this country, millions upon millions of people, should get taxpayer-funded health care. She was all in on it last summer, and they are all in on it now. So my loser of the week, social media influencer and now failed congressional candidate, Kat Abigazala. What do you think, Matt?
She's a good one. And what I love about that is in that exchange, she said, it's not controversial. Ma'am, it's incredibly controversial. Giving taxpayer-funded healthcare to illegals is like an 80-20 issue for our side. But I also love that, like, she's a crackpot that you would have thought would be like a 2 or 3%er. She got a lot of support from the Justice Democrats, from the Squad, from all these people, which, again, to your point, solidifies the fact that they stand with a lot of her crazy, kooky views, which, again, is a reminder that there's still a lot of Democrats who simply believe that the internet is real life, and they will continue to believe that until their dying day, and I love it.
You know what was crazy about that exchange when I think back on it? It was apparent to me that she had literally never met another Republican. And so to have it actually happen live on the air, live on CNN, was actually sort of fascinating television. But you mentioned this earlier. You know, we had Newsom's wife saying, these conservatives, they live in a silo. No, it is the loony left that lives in these tight little bubbles. And when you actually encounter them in real life and you have just a 20 or 30-second exchange about an issue, you see that their positions melt like paper straws, Matt. They can't hold up in any kind of debate, and that's what happened to Kat. So we're sorry she lost, but we are proud to award her loser of the week. Matt, we got to go. We're out of time. And we'll have you back soon. The 10-Minute Drill podcast, I encourage you to watch it. It's great. Matt, you do great work on it, and we're proud that you're part of the Scott Jennings Show.
Sir.
We're done for the week. Enjoy your weekend and go to the airport early if you're flying. Scott is out. See you Monday.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.